Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Patrick. Now, if you like what the UK Column does, you would like to support us, then please join us at ukcolumn.org/community. The chat box today absolutely full, and lots of interesting conversation going on there. So thank you guys for that. So join us at ukcolumn.org/community if you'd like to support us. Other ways you can support us are to share our material. So obviously on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, and dlive.tv. Right, let's move quickly on to vaccine safety. And here is June Rain. She's the interim chief executive of the MHRA, which is, of course, the medicines regulator in the UK. And she said there's nothing unusual in what we're seeing in terms of vaccine adverse reactions. Now, this has come about because, as we reported on Monday's programme, in Norway, they had announced 23 deaths, 13 of which they'd investigated as a result of the vaccine, or apparently as a result of the vaccine, or maybe after a couple of days they started to backtrack on that because they came under a bit of pressure. But nonetheless, there was questions raised about the fact that this Pfizer vaccine in particular was pushed through so quickly. She, however, went on to say this: reports are coming in really thick and fast now. This is to the yellow card scheme, which is all about adverse reactions as a result of the vaccines. So that's quite an admission from the MHRA. They've got reports of adverse reactions coming in really thick and fast now.
Is that?
Yes,
oh, really?
That's what she's saying.
We'd like to hear about those.
Well, we'll come on to that in 1 second. Now, of course, June Rain herself, she has been a career civil servant. She was on the assessment committee, co-chair of the World Health Organization's Advisory Committee on Safety of Medicinal Products. Her special interests apparently are risk communication and patient involvement. And she's been leading a program of work on medicine for women's health. So that's all good stuff. Now, of course, let's just look at the history of this. If we look to the BBC here, COVID-19, Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine judged safe for use in the UK. So that was December when the announcement was made that they were going to, that it was judged safe. And on what basis? Well, it was on this basis because she had told the BBC that the benefits of the Pfizer vaccine far outweigh any risk, despite the fact that there had been no proper risk assessment of what the risks would be. This was just her judgment, her guess, basically. So where does that take us? Well, the EU criticised that hasty judgment in December, if you remember, and then they very quickly went and did it themselves. Because, of course, the pressure came on even on the EU.
And I might add, just to add one caveat, Mike, how could you claim to know anything about the long-term or medium to long-term safety of a product and effectively an experimental technology, mRNA vaccines? How could you know anything about the medium to long-term safety effects after only 6 or 7 months of development?
Well, we're going to come on to that in a second. So next, we'll just remind ourselves that she also claimed that the MHRA had not cut any corners to approve the Pfizer vaccine. Is that true? Well, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Normally, there are 3 phases of trials for these vaccines. Phase 1 and phase 2 apparently have been completed. But here's phase 3. From the US government website, clinicaltrials.gov. And if we just look at this in more detail, estimated study completion date, January the 27th, 2023. So we're in phase 3 trials at the moment, and yet the vaccine is being rolled out and is being pumped into people's arms. The only conclusion that I can really come to here, Patrick, is that the public are part of this phase 3 trial, whether they are aware of it or not.
What other conclusion can you draw from that, Mike? I mean, so this is the biggest live clinical trial in human history.
Yes.
In terms of drugs and pharmaceuticals. They're literally using the public at large as the test group.
And there's pretty broad recognition of this, Patrick, which is why we continue to see headlines like this. This is from the Glasgow Times, Coronavirus Scotland care home staff not given enough information on COVID vaccines. And what they're saying is that Deborah Clark, who's the Unison Secretary, Trade Union Secretary, is saying that she expects some workers to launch legal action over mandatory immunisation. In other words, they're being told they can only keep their jobs if they're immunised. But the point here is that the Sunday Times had reported nearly 30% of social care workers in Glasgow could be said to be sceptical about taking this vaccine. So Deborah Clark, speaking to BBC Radio Scotland, said the problem is there's very little information out there and the anti-vaxxers are winning. There's a reason behind these high figures of refusals, and that includes a lack of education and the fact staff aren't getting a choice of which vaccine they can have. Most members I speak to say they just want to wait a couple of weeks to see what happens. In other words, they want to wait and see, for the people who get it, how many of them have an adverse reaction.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a natural human response, isn't it? If you have any worry, concerns about your own personal safety or your family's personal safety, that's not an unreasonable thing for a human to expect a human to do.
No,